Hello and welcome. I'm here with Joy Harvey, and she has come today to share a story about suicide and how it's impacted her family. I asked Joy to come today because of the experience that her and her family has had, and also the fact that every year Joy and her mother Jane contribute to support You Matter, and it's just such an honor to do this interview with you here today, Joy.
It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm gonna just cut to the chase here. How has suicide impacted your family?
Suicide tore my family apart. That's really the only way to explain it. But on the other side of things, it's given my family an unfortunate peace that we haven't had since my brother was about 18 years old.
Okay.
That's when all of his issues kind of started, and that's when his struggle as well as our struggle to get him the help that he needed started.
So it was your brother that committed suicide?
Yes, it was my brother that committed suicide, but at the same time, suicide has impacted us because now we don't use silence as a coping mechanism anymore. We realize that silence is one of the reasons that this whole situation came about. A lot of times we would use silence to cope with Rick's drinking and his behavior and his mental illness because that was the best way for us to do it.
So when you saw him not doing well or acting out, you just would be quiet?
Well, the quiet would come. At first, we would try to get him the help that he needed, get him the resources to talk to someone, meds if he needed them. But for Rick, there was always a reason why it didn't work.
Okay.
He didn't want to talk about what happened to him. Maybe it was out of being ashamed or not knowing how to talk about what happened to him, or the medicine made him feel funny. He had some kind of reaction to it, and he always convinced us that he would be okay and that everything would be okay, and then we would go into times of just silence where nobody really addressed the issue, and then it was when he would have recurrences of drinking and violence that then again the conversation would start. And I think we've realized that the conversation has to always be ongoing.
Yeah. And my next question was going to be, did he show any signs?
Yes, all throughout Rick's life he showed signs of suicide.
Because that's not always the case, because sometimes they don't show signs.
True. Sometimes they don't show signs, they don't talk about it. But with Rick, when we would attempt to get him the help he needed and he would become angry with us because he couldn't do what we wanted him to, or he was disappointing us, he would lash out and say things like, maybe it would be better if I wasn't even here. Maybe I'll just kill myself. And I think for us, that brought out fear, and that created the silence, because if we left him alone and we listened to what he had to say, he was going to be fine, that everything would be okay. But it didn't turn out that way.
No. And that had to have been so scary when he started talking about committing suicide.
It was very scary, and I think a lot of the time for us, we thought that they were just words, and it wasn't for me until after he had passed that I'd spoken with some of his friends and a girlfriend that he had been with, and realized that he had actually made attempts, but we just didn't know about them, or that accidents that happened were actually his attempts that he hid as just, oh, it was an accident, or oh, I just did something stupid.
So it's important to, when people start talking about this openly, that
you keep the conversation going, because if they're talking about it, it's something that they're seriously considering and thinking about.
And so his depression, it lasted for many years.
Yes.
And how did that impact you? Did it wear you guys down after time?
Yes, it wore us down a lot after time, and I think that's why we use silence to cope. Because if I didn't hear from Rick, I and my mother, I imagine for her, I just assumed he was okay. that there wasn't anything going on. But a lot of times we would find out later on that all throughout the silence there were issues and things that would build until actions like being drunk and driving the car and hitting 3 other cars, and later on realizing that was him attempting to end his life. But he convinced us all, no, I was just drunk and I was stupid and I got behind the wheel of a vehicle. And we believed him because it was easier than having the conversation and confronting him.
Yeah. But I also have to think that it's got to be hard to carry that burden if somebody you love so deeply is depressed.
100%. And I think for a long time, for myself, I always thought that Rick wasn't just depressed, because Rick would show signs of one personality 1 minute, 30 seconds later, a different person. You never knew who you were going to get with Rick. And I wondered throughout his life if he didn't have multiple personalities or something else going on. And after his last hospital stay, they actually diagnosed him with schizophrenia. So I don't think that it was depression we were dealing with through all those years. I think it was an undiagnosed schizophrenic that we didn't know how to help because we didn't know what was wrong.
Yeah, and we're a family member or a friend or somebody that cares about them. They're not doctors, and they can't, come up with these diagnoses.
Well, and you can try, but for us it made the situation worse, because whenever you would suggest things to him or offer up information, he would become very angry and very violent at times. So I think for us, just going with the whole Rick's depressed and doesn't want to deal with it was the easiest way to deal with the situation. And now we're learning that silence is like a cancer, and if you are just silent, that cancer is going to grow.
Okay, so now being on this side of the situation, what advice would you give family members who may be dealing with a similar situation where their son or their daughter or friend is just lashing out in anger and not being receptive?
Well, no matter how scary, no matter how much lashing out, you have to keep communication open. You have to keep talking. Even if you're sending messages, making phone calls and leaving voicemails and they're not returning them, hopefully they're getting them. And they're realizing that they're not alone and they're not suffering alone, that there's somebody who loves them, that's there, that's unjudgmental, that loves them unconditionally and just wants to see them do better. Being quiet is the worst thing you can do.
And I would have to think that if you were to just go into fear and to be afraid, that wouldn't bring about the help that they need. I would think that if we, like you say, speak out, keep messaging them, contacting them, and also that there's, at times, it's appropriate for us to call the police.
Wellness checks are 100% a thing. That is the way that Rick ended up in the hospital the last time that he was there. I knew he wasn't doing well and I couldn't get to him, so I called the police in Woodstock to go and check on him, and they took him to the hospital for us.
And this could be a great way to push an assessment that may be needed.
When my mom went to the hospital with them, and they talked with her too, and they took everybody's kind of opinion and observations of what was going on, and they decided to keep him and hopefully get him the help he needed. But Rick was really good at telling you what you wanted to hear, when you wanted to hear it. And he did the exact same thing in the hospital that time, and they let him out early, and it didn't end so well.
So what have you learned from this whole experience? What would be the thing that's taught you?
Not to be silent. Stop in, check on people, make sure they know that somebody out there wants them to be here.
Okay.
Give them a reason to maybe hang on. Your text message might be the thing that saves somebody. Just, my family has an empty chair at the table because we stopped talking.
Okay.
I don't want other families to not talk and have an empty chair at their table. If me losing Rick And now being strong enough to be open and honest about everything that transpired in our lives, if that's going to save somebody else, I'll lay it all bare, just so that can happen.
And if anybody watching this, you're feeling suicidal in this moment, it's so important that you reach out and ask for help. It's also important to start to look at your life and maybe change things. Change one small thing and just keep working towards positive changes that you want to see in your life. Accomplish mini goals. Do something that makes you feel good about yourself. And self-care is so important that you take a little bit of time and just learn how to stop negative dialogues in your head, learn how to express what you feel. Reach in and grab some courage. Be courageous enough to reach out to a family member who wants to love you, to just share with them, share the burden. And it's not like you would bring them down, you would help them in this scenario. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. We would give anything to have had the chance to do that and still have Rick here. And I know I suffer with mental health issues myself. It's hard. It's difficult. There are days that you don't feel like there's really any reason for tomorrow, but there always is. Even if it's my dog that I have at home that's excited to see me when I get home. I know it's something very small and simple, but hang on to that one thing, as little as it is, and it might be enough to get you to the next date, to the next person, to the next text message, coffee with a friend, anything to keep yourself here with the people that love you.
And in addition to, if you're a family member who's concerned about somebody struggling and you're checking in on it on a daily basis, try to create a bit of accountability. Try to make plans with that person. Say, tomorrow I'm going to come and see you, or create situations where they have to show up to see you, or that make plans that you're showing up to see them. That's one thing I've done when I've talked people off the ledge a few times from in a suicidal state. And so what I would do is I'd always say, after I was finished the phone call and I felt like they were safe, I would say, okay, tomorrow, what time can I call you?
Yes.
So I create some accountability and create a reason that they know, okay, my family or my friend is going to call me tomorrow.
Exactly. And we went for long periods of time where he wouldn't check in with us and we wouldn't check in with him, and that is a regret that I carry now, because how easy is it to pick up the phone or just drive around and visit somebody? I know we get busy, but we need to realize what's important in our life. Our busy or those people that we care about and that might need us.
And so the last thing I would like to leave you with is that, again, if somebody's struggling, it's so important that you don't move into a fearful place. Because when you move into fear, and if you call them up in a panic, or you're texting the person all in a panic, it's not rising above where that person is at.
Very true.
When we hold love for that person, hold love for ourselves, and hold that person in love. Now we've risen above the situation. We've positioned ourselves to be in power and to share that power of love with the person that we care about.
I totally agree.
Any final parting words?
Just hug each other and love each other, and always, always talk. Always talk.
Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.